Hey, welcome everybody to another Dr. Perry's podcast. Today I'm honored to have the Dean of Tufts Dental School, Dr. Nadeem Karimbux, the 17th Dean of the Dental School. And he's going to be talking today about the state of dental education in the United States. Dr. Karimbux, welcome. You're a tough guy to track down. I know you have a lot of engagements all around the country here, but thank you for taking the time to speak to us. And welcome. And well, I guess my first question to you is really, where do you see the big picture of dental education right now? As a dean of a dental school, a major dental school in the country, what do you see what's happening?
You know, I think you've got to take a little bit of a historical perspective in terms of what's happening with dental education. You know, when I went to dental school in the mid-'80s, we saw closing of several what I would call legacy schools like Tufts, Georgetown, Northwestern, etc., Emory. But since then, we've seen what was 55 dental schools grow up to 77. And many of the new dental schools that are opening up are what I would call non-traditional schools, in that they're not anchored in an academic health center. Research might not be a part of their mission. Some schools, for example, might be affiliated with osteopathic medical schools. Many of the newer schools are also opening in very underserved rural areas. That's part of their mission. And so, first of all, I would talk about that change at the institute level. If you were to ask any of the deans of dental schools what the top 3 challenges are in dental education, I would say the number 1 challenge that we're all facing is faculty recruitment and retention. The second is the cost of education and the return on investment. Right now, dentistry remains a very popular career choice, and last year we saw about a 10 or 15% increase in applications. So certainly, despite the challenges of the cost of education, there's still a great interest. But we do worry about kind of a point where students might say it's just not worth the return on investment. And in fact, if we go back to the mid-1980s, we had about 1.2 applicants to 1 slot. And so that certainly impacted the quality of the students, and many schools shrank class size at that time. And then the third challenge in the current environment is really what we call the sustainability of our models. You know, we're all running very large clinical operations, and much like in private practice, the challenges are fairly stagnant revenue growth, cost of doing business going up, mainly on the HR side. So again, those are the 3 main things that we're dealing with: faculty recruitment, retention, cost of education, and sustainability of really our clinical operations.
Well, I mean, those are all challenging things as a dean that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. A lot of people don't understand the ins and outs of it, or what's going on behind the scenes. They just see what's out front. They don't see what you have to do or the decisions that have to be made. I can appreciate that. I want to change it just a little bit, and we'll get back to some of the things you talked about. But I want to talk about the curriculum of dental schools, because that's always evolving. We have technology that's here. We have the digital workflow that's happening. How, as the leader of the institution, how do you look at that, and how do you prepare for something like that? How do you prepare for the changing technology and keep it current?
Yeah, so you know, the first thing I think the audience needs to understand is all dental schools have to meet a standard. It's called accreditation. Comes through the Commission on Dental Accreditation. There are 6 standards that we have to meet, ranging from kind of institutional finances through clinical operations, through research, for example. I would say, as a dean and thinking about the future of dentistry, it's very hard to predict what's around the corner. The changes are so rapid, knowledge is explosion. We have AI at our fingertips right now.
That's changing everything.
So what I talk about in terms of competency is a general dentist who graduates with a basic skill set, a basic clinical competency to be able to practice right away, But more importantly, apart from technical skill development, is what I would call the development of the mind. How do we get our students to think as what we call adult learners? And if we can give them that skill set to function in a world that's constantly changing and evolving, I think they will be able to keep up with the many changes that will happen throughout their career.
I mean, you make a valid point, because I mean, a lot of people think that when you go to school, that's the end of your education. It's only really just the beginning of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a continuum. I mean, you have to keep up with everything. You're constantly learning. If you look at the top tier people that are out there, they're
Right.
constantly questioning, they're constantly
Right.
learning,
Right.
constantly evolving and changing. What they thought of yesterday may not be the same today.
Yeah. And I think if you think about the fundamentals, there are some debates going on in dental education, for example. Should you only basically be teaching your students how to do composites, right? Versus composites and amalgam. Should you be teaching students the analog way of learning, or a blended way of learning, or completely digital? Some schools still believe that if you teach the students the fundamentals, once they learn the fundamentals, the application of the technologies and other methodologies can happen relatively seamlessly. I've heard of some schools that have gone completely one way or the other.
Right.
And the issue is you can't predict where those students are in private practice, right? So if you have a student who's in a rural population where amalgam could potentially be used and they've never learned how to place amalgam, it's like the dentists that are there have to teach the recent graduates that.
Right.
I've spoken to many of our alumni that have been through what I would call a more traditional curriculum that is really taught by specialists. And they've picked up on the digital workflows very, very quickly, because they said I had a very good fundamental kind of learning in the school that I was in.
No, I think you make a valid point, because I mean, if you know the fundamentals, I mean, if the technology goes down and you don't know the fundamentals, then you got a problem. I mean, at least I feel for myself, I learned the fundamentals. I love the technology, but if it goes down, I'm still able to put the crown in. I'm still able to make a temporary.
Right.
I'm still able to do everything else. Well, let's switch, because you brought up a couple of points, and I want to talk about the cost of dental education, because I mean, the whole map has changed. How much you can borrow now, the cost of educate. It's very expensive to run a dental school, to educate someone to become a dentist.
Yeah.
How are you as an institution? Is it coming from alum? Do you have scholarships? How is Tufts going to attack this, so to speak?
Yeah, so I think fundamentally, when you're running a dental school, much like a business, you have to think about your revenue and expenses. For a private dental school, if you look at the average revenue that comes from tuition, it's usually about 65 up to 70%. Your clinics can probably hit about 25 to 30% of your total revenue. And then depending on your research size and mission, it can vary from a low of 5% to higher. The issue we're dealing with fundamentally is running a large clinic in a very inefficient way, because our students are the primary care providers. They're the ones that have to learn, and just when they become their most productive, they graduate. Like private practice, our number one expenses are HR related in terms of paying your faculty and your staff. And so, as a dean of a school who is trying to perhaps increase your revenue by about 3 to 5% a year, just to offer your staff and faculty a 3 to 5% cost of living increase, you have very few levers to pull, right? One is, do you raise your revenue or tuition by 3 to 5% depending on how you're doing or forecasting? Because your clinic revenue is not going to grow more than 3 to 5% a year as well.
Right.
And then the other side is really looking at your expenses. So if you look at US dental education, it's expensive simply because our students are primary care providers in a model that tends to be inefficient on the clinical side. And in a way, they're not only paying for the first 2 years of their education, they're actually paying for their clinical part of the education, which is faculty intense as well. And so that's where I think the cost of education continues to be high in terms of becoming.
Do you, it just poses a question for me, is that do you see AI changing the landscape for you as a dean, as far as we're very people oriented, dentistry is.
Yeah.
Do you see AI changing that dynamics as far as the educational aspect of it, or do you see that still faculty are an integral part of the equation?
I think it will change things in ways that we don't fully comprehend. One example is our faculty spend a lot of time one-on-one with students, either in the preclinical setting or in the clinical setting. One thing we could perhaps forecast is in a preclinical setting, we could be in a world where students' preps are scanned, analyzed using AI, and the kind of feedback that they get from their faculty comes more from tools that they have that are at their disposal.
So it'd be more of an adjunct.
An adjunct, yeah, I think faculty will still have to be present, but I can see technology and AI helping students fundamentally to learn using these tools. I've got a sense that for basic science, preclinical sciences as well, you could forecast a future where students are using AI tutor agents that are helping them a little bit kind of one-on-one, where that's a resource where perhaps in the future we may not have as many faculty that can meet with students. Let's say you take an exam and get feedback on areas where you're weak, and it pulls up materials that you can actually learn from. So I see some efficiencies that are being created in that. You know, how students use AI is a whole other debate about where can they use it in a way that's responsible, ethical, not being used for cheating. On the clinical side, I think there can
Well, we
be...
want to keep them thinking too.
Right.
You know, want them just relying on AI and say, "Oh, well, AI said it, so it must be true."
Right. You know, I think in the clinical area, you could imagine a future where a new student enters their clinical information, enters the patient history, and the kind of questioning they would get from a faculty member will be presented again by AI to them before they interact with the faculty. So, for example, for me teaching in the preclinical area, one of the first things I ask the students is, before we go back, tell me a little bit about your patient.
Right.
And I'm kind of screening for questions, both in the medical history, but perhaps the perio history as well. One of the biggest skills our students kind of have to pick up on is how to take medical history, clinical information, radiographic information, put it together in a treatment plan. I've got a feeling at some point AI will present some of that fundamentally at a basic level.
Right.
And, you know, the faculty's job then will be to digest it with the student rather than really checking that you've actually done all of this.
Right.
So I see great benefits. On the practice side, I would say as a dental school, I would see the greatest benefit when it comes to running the practice. Right now, we're going through a project where we're taking scheduling away from students and trying to do it in much more of a practice-based way. Many practitioners are now using AI to help field questions from patients, get them into the appointments.
Front desk people, they're using it for front desk people.
Yeah. So I've got a feeling that that will help offset some of the costs that we have, and certainly in the revenue cycle management way as well with AI. I think that will greatly help us in our operational side.
I mean, the bottom line is that we're educating a dentist, but our main commodity, so to speak, if you want to put it in terms of business, I mean, we still have to take care of a patient.
Yeah.
The patient is the ultimate goal here, make sure that they get the best service.
Right. And I think there's a lot of worry in a lot of work sectors about loss of jobs. I mean, you know, patient care, healthcare is a very interactive kind of a practice.
Right.
So we will always need people that are delivering care at the point of care as well. I think there'll be greater efficiencies. But the question really on how we integrate. You know, the one other piece that people really have to be aware of is all of these technologies come with a cost.
Yes.
An upfront cost, licensing costs, sustainability costs. And the one way you can recoup that is by being more efficient, seeing more patients. But at some point, there's a limit in terms of what you want to invest in. Given all the technologies that you've got and trying to balance obviously your margins as well. I think that fundamentally is true for dental schools as well.
Do you think, I mean, obviously you're well aware of all the changes that are happening and you see them, but do you see yourself having to think outside the box? Do you find yourself having to think in more creative ways? And if so, what are they? I mean, what ways do you think you know what I mean? Because I mean, it's changing. I mean, you've got the different models of dental education,
Yeah.
dental schools.
Yeah.
You've got all these pressures coming on with technology.
Right.
You've got to educate a dental student and to become a dentist, an efficient, successful, caring, compassionate, and all the other variables there. And you got the financial restraints of it. And you've got student loans that have been cut down in cost that people can get.
Right.
What do you do? I mean,
fundamentally, you need to have some data that backs up what you're doing is either improving or kind of, in quotation marks, I don't want to generalize, but really producing a competent dentist that's going to be successful. I have a very kind of non-scientific way of gauging that when I speak to alumni that are 1, 2, 5, 10 years out, in terms of them looking back and saying, I was really well prepared. In most areas, there are certain areas that I think a lot of students don't feel prepared in, for example, practice management. We can talk about why that is.
right.
The creativity, I think, can happen in pockets because you've still got to be accredited by a school. You got to make sure
you got rules and regulations you got to follow.
Fundamentally, you got to make sure that your students are passing standardized exams, which sometimes can hold creativity and time down. So, there are these external and internal factors that stop you from the creativity piece. But many schools, I think, including Tufts, are creative in the way they've integrated basic science curriculum, perhaps the way that they're trying to teach preclinical kind of procedures, certainly in the clinical area as well, with a certain moderation, again, of all of these factors. So there are groups like curriculum change and innovation groups that are thinking about this. But I wouldn't say that fundamentally anybody's really pushed the envelope as much as they would like to.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, you got your boundaries, but I'm just curious. Let's talk about the workforce and access to care, because we have issues in the city. I mean, we have to care for underserved populations.
Yeah.
We got rural areas. How does Tufts handle that? And how do dental schools in general handle that in solving this issue?
Yeah. So when dental schools set their clinical fees, there's really two levels. One is for dental students, which typically I say is about a third of what a patient would pay on the outside. And at our graduate level, it's about 2/3 of what they would pay on the outside. Here at Tufts, about 65% of our patients are self-pay. 35% have mass health benefits, and the rest might have insurance. So it's a very different payer mix from perhaps the traditional private practice. And so by default, the patients that we see at dental schools are patients that have no access to oral health care. They tend to be sometimes patients that come from underserved areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so we almost are, I would say, in our clinical areas, working like a community health center, and our reimbursement rates are at the same time not as great as a community health center. And so that fundamentally is a little bit of a flaw in the way that we're reimbursed. The value that we bring for seeing at Tufts, 24,000 individual patients a year.
A lot of people.
Yeah, part of our mission obviously is our students that are learning, but we really are a safety net for a lot of patients. And so we do provide that service. I think it's recognized by our university. Our president likes to say that Tufts has a civic engagement mission, and the very definition of that is the dental school. It's the front door of the university because we interact with so many people that come here for care. The other ways that dental schools are meeting, I think, the unmet need is some of the newer dental schools place their students in community health centers for most of the fourth year. So some of the newer models certainly are not bringing patients in internally, but placing them outside where the community really can get access to care. Here at Tufts, we have 7 clinics in the state of Massachusetts where we provide access to patients with special needs. 6,500 patients come to those external clinics.
But to give you kudos, I mean, you've been innovative in the sense that with the international program. They're out now in the community. They're serving Medicare, Medicaid patients,
Right.
underserved.
Yeah, and that's a model obviously you as program director put together where not only are they working in communities, but they're getting more of a private practice kind of an experience that prepares them to be future ready practitioners. So
It's also helping the community too.
Yeah.
Which is good. All right, well, let's talk about international dentists and global dentistry in general. I mean, that's kind of dear to my heart. I mean, my audience is very interested in it. We have a lot of people out here that want to get into dental school. They want to be here. Tufts is always number one choice, along with the other 15 other schools they apply to, but Tufts is number one. What do you say to these people that want to get in? We only have so many spots. I mean, I see many applicants that have great credentials, and you see them too, and you've encountered them in your travels as you go across the country. What do I say to these people?
Well, obviously there are two tracks, right, to getting in as an international student. There's a track that I took, which was.
Wait! We have to stop it. You're an international student?
I am. I grew up in Kenya, East Africa.
Oh, all right.
So I guess I'm the more traditional track where I came here going to college and then going to dental school and staying on. But for people that have dental degrees from overseas, it is a huge undertaking to come to a new country.
Yes.
And to want to go back to dental school a second time, so to speak. And clearly, there aren't enough slots with all the dental schools for advanced standing international students. In fact, it can be more competitive than getting into dental school. So in other words, there are many more qualified applicants than there are slots.
Right.
It's just a reflection of the systems that we're in. My advice to people obviously is try to reach for your dream. Unfortunately, there is a reality that you might not get in. And at what point do you look for alternative careers in oral health care? I've had many, many students that haven't got into traditional DMD programs or into the residencies they want. And my whole message to them is, despite your dream, there is more to oral health care than becoming a dentist, becoming a hygienist, becoming an assistant, and so forth. And like I said, I think that's a reality that some people have to try to.
It's a tough one, but I mean, I'd like to keep the dream alive as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
All right, let's change this a little bit more. I want to talk about technology. What do you see as the most major advancement coming up in the near future? What like with an artificial intelligence? Like if you could say, okay, it's 2026 right now. In 5 years, I see robots running around the clinic floor, or I see what would you see? Just if you were just thinking outlandishly, what would you think?
Right. I would see tools that, again, like I mentioned, diagnostically are integrated into our electronic health record from front to back, whether it's the operational side of the registration of patients, whether it's the students entering information that gets digested and presented back to them. I think those kinds of tools will be.
Well, you talk about diagnostic. I was looking at you, and you have some technology on you.
Yeah.
Would you see someone coming into the dental school, maybe going through a scanner, like they do in medical, or something like that?
Right. I mean, there is a certain amount of reality to the technologies that are out there, the costs of companies that are actually going to be around long term. So I think I've mentioned, obviously, there are 2 or 3 things that we think about a student. One is learning and how they're going to learn, how they're going to integrate AI, and those advancements will continue to happen. How we create clinical learning environments that help. Digital dentistry, obviously, which already is using AI, will continue to progress. And then, diagnostically and clinically as well. Those are really the 4 advances. So if 5 years from now, I would see much more integration of that. There are robots out there that are placing implants, for example.
Yeah.
I have very few samples of how people are using that technology. I heard from one practitioner it's become a very expensive coat hanger.
Yeah.
I find using my digital workflows and stents to place a lot more efficient than trying to get the robot set up. And if there's something wrong, then I've got to drop it. I was recently at a school in Southeast Asia, a very prominent dental school, that invested in 10 haptic units for student
Nice,
learning.
nice.
Same thing. There's
Same
a
problem.
limited use to those technologies. And the real question is, what is the upfront and ongoing cost of those? If you really don't have an outcome or evidence that this is actually helping students learn much more efficiently and better than our traditional ways. And I think with anything that's introduced, you go through that period of the people that are early adopters, and we as dentists are known as great early adopters. You speak to anyone and say, open my closet and you see everything that didn't work.
Right.
And so I think that's really the balance of the advances and the advances we're seeing are tremendous, right?
But I think you hit. I think you hit it right on the head as far as, I mean, we are early adopters. Most of them are. I mean,
Yeah.
most of us don't like change, but the ones that do, they'll take the change, and they'll buy things. And it used to be $1,000 was the magic number. You have $1,000. Oh, okay, $1,000, and then if it didn't work, it was okay. But now it's more than that. It's tens of thousands of dollars. So it's a much more expensive coat hanger, as you say, if it doesn't work. So you
Yeah.
have to make sure.
Yeah. And we're running a practice with 350 preclinical chairs, 350 clinic chairs. So the size of the operation, apart from introducing the technology throughout, is one thing, but then maintaining it on a daily basis with the resource that we have in terms of HR helping you with technology. One of the most frustrating things I think for faculty and students is the support that you have in an academic institute sometimes that is fairly limited.
Yeah.
Why can't we introduce this quickly, or this unit went down, why hasn't it been fixed? But there's a certain reality to the resource that you've got to be able to run these things. So the more that you introduce, the more that you need the
Take
HR
care.
support and technology behind it. And so that's kind of the balancing act, I think, for all of us kind of in our academic institutes.
Well, before we close, I got a couple more questions, but before we close, I gotta ask you a few questions, because this is the talk around here. People always know you for lots of different things,
Right.
and one thing they know you for are socks.
Yes.
What is it? What is this? Can you debunk the rumors, the myths? Why these different colored socks? And how many pairs do you actually own?
Well, that's a trade secret. My challenge, so let me tell you the story, right? In my previous institute, there was a dental assistant who always told me to dress from head to toe.
Yeah.
That dental assistant has followed me to Tufts now, and every time I see her, she asks me to pull up my trousers to make sure my socks match with my ties. So that's where the challenge is.
Oh, I got you.
And I get no credit for it. People normally say, is it your wife that chose the outfits? I'm like, no, give me some credit. I can do these things myself.
So you can dress yourself.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad to see that. Okay. Another fun fact that people may or may not know about you is I've listened to you many times. You talk about Ted Lasso.
Yes.
What is it about Ted Lasso you like? And is there something that our audience could take away from Ted Lasso?
Yeah, well, I think Ted Lasso is known for many kind of simple sayings about teamwork and kind of building morale amongst teams. And here at the dental school, we have 1,000 students in residence. We have about 300 staff members, 300 faculty members. So we're a very large community, and it's hard to message and communicate, I think. And we have to communicate as much as possible. So for me, it's really trying to pick up 2 or 3 messages that resonate with people, right? So I talk about the mission of the dental school being training leaders in oral health. Our mission statements are education committed to clinical excellence, knowledge to improve oral and general health, and caring community. We're going through a big project right now to basically increase our operational efficiency, provide better care. The 3 tenets there are we graduating practice-ready students? Are we providing patient-centered care? Are we running our practices as close to a private practice? So what resonates with me is that kind of messaging with 2 or 3 things. And Ted Lasso, I think, quite sweetly conveys that in some of the sayings.
In a simplistic fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
And one of the things that resonates with me is you might feel like an individual player out there, but you're actually a team of 11. And so it's really, I think, the success of the dental school comes from our people. And appreciating them and giving them gratitude, I think, is really an important lesson for us all.
No, I agree with that. All right. This question comes out. If you weren't a dentist, you weren't a dean, what would you be? Would you be the narrator on the duck tours? What would you be?
Good question. Something that I haven't really, I would probably be an educator.
You'd be an educator?
Yeah.
Would it be dental or would you be in?
No, I mean, if I'm not in the dental area, I would be an educator because, I have students that meet with me to talk about my career choice.
Yeah.
And one of the things I tell them is when I was a perio resident, I was providing patient care, I was doing research. And the one thing that really resonated with me as a second and third year resident was teaching dental students. And I said to myself, if there were a world where I could do all three things, that would be the world that I would love to be in. And so being a full-time educator throughout my career has been important to me. And, as a dean, obviously you make a lot of difficult decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to pull away from the things that gave you that kind of joy.
Yeah.
And what gives me the most joy is talking to students, seeing them succeed, but mentoring my leadership team now and teaching them some skills in terms of leadership. So that's the part that really makes my job continue to be fun.
Well, that's good. All right. I hope these questions aren't too hard for you.
I'm used to hard questions, but
what if people are out there and they're saying, I thought I knew Nadeem Karimbux from Tufts.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that you can share with them that they don't know about you? And they'd be surprised.
Okay. I like to do hot yoga and I can do the crow position.
Wow. I did not know that.
So those people that do yoga would appreciate crow.
Yeah. Wow. That's good. That's good. All right. What's the best piece of advice that you received as a young individual that you still carry on today?
I would say it's a piece of advice, but it's something that I've picked up, I think, throughout my career. And this is what I advise people: try to find a great mentor that gives you opportunity.
So get a mentor.
Yeah.
What skill set would you want to master outside of dentistry? If you could do anything and be really good at it, would be an artist, could be a musician or whatever.
Formula One race driver.
Really?
Yeah.
I
followed Formula One from when I was 8 or 9. And in fact, right now at home, I have a Lego Audi Formula One car that I have to construct. Been sitting there for a while.
Oh, we're learning quite a bit about you today. We are. Well, I want to just ask one more question, and the question is, it's really advice to the audience, to dental students in general. What advice would you give them to prepare for a future for dentistry and in dentistry?
Yeah, I was required to do research as a dental student. I'd never done research before. And I think the opportunity to do a research project gives you an opportunity to think about real problems, research them in terms of background significance, pose a hypothetical question, go and do something physical to find the answer to it, and then change what you thought about it originally. And, we kind of say that research allows you to have a curious mind. And so what I would tell people is always keep that curiosity, because that's what drives you throughout your clinical practice, your administrative work, being an educator. It's always asking that question of why are we doing things this way, or can we do things
Stay
better?
curious.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, I want to thank you very much for taking time. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot to run around with the school, and I want to thank you very much for your insight, your leadership perspective. Dental education continues to evolve, but the mission remains the same. To train dentists who will improve the oral health of our communities. And with that said, stay tuned for our next podcast, And who knows, we might have a follow-up with Dr. Karimbux again. We never know. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.